Every NBA fan has hot takes which seemingly no one agrees with them on, and these can go either way. Sometimes these takes end up being right, and sometimes these takes end up being dead wrong. And if you've been watching my channel for any length of time, you'll know that I've had a few takes in both directions. I am not someone who really shies away from the controversial opinions, and it's often made me look like a fool. But if there is one hill that I am going to die on as an NBA fan, as someone who has been watching this game for a while now, who thinks that they know quite a bit about basketball, and who loves sharing their opinion, I believe that Kawhi Leonard not only deserved the 2017 MVP, but was completely robbed of it. I think the fact that he was not even seen as a legitimate candidate behind Westbrook and Harden is both idiotic and disrespectful, and he 100% in my mind was the deserving MVP of that season. I have never heard another person agree with this take without me convincing them of it first, and today I'm going to tell you while you are all freaking wrong. Westbrook didn't deserve it, Harden didn't deserve it, Kawhi Leonard deserved the 2017 MVP. Debates about the MVP race generally come down to people on two different sides. There is the side who believes it should go to the best player on the best team, which is how the NBA normally votes, and there is the side who believes it should go to the quote-unquote true most valuable player, which normally just means whoever you think is the best player in the league that season. And 2017 was no exception to this norm. In this year, you had Russell Westbrook win the MVP in a very unusual decision via the NBA, where they gave it to the quote-unquote most valuable player, despite James Harden not only arguably being just as good, if not a better player, but leading his team to 8 more wins in the same conference, while also not having much help himself. His team was slightly better overall, but also faced more injuries than Westbrook, and they managed to win 55 games, as opposed to Westbrook's 47. And if you want to know who I think deserved the award, specifically between these two players, I am leaning towards James Harden. I think that he had a slightly worse season than Russell Westbrook. I think Westbrook was the better player. However, winning 8 more games while having a team that was better but also had more injuries, I think gives Harden the award. Because people sit there and say, well, Westbrook had a worse team, and it's true, he did. But number one, James Harden still didn't have a great team around him, and number two, many of his best players were injured. Eric Gordon missed a little bit of time this year, Lou Williams only played 23 games, Clint Capella played 65, and Montrezl Harrell played 58. So several of Harden's better teammates missed a significant chunk of time, specifically Lou Williams. So I think that gives him the edge in the MVP race, even though I would say that Russell Westbrook was the better player. However, neither of these players, in my mind, come even close to Kawhi Leonard in terms of who deserved this award. And I honestly have no idea why Kawhi doesn't get the hype he deserves for this award, other than the fact that he plays on the Spurs. I really think that is all it is, and I think it goes to show you how incredibly powerful a narrative can be, number one, and number two, how important publicity can be for a player. We see it in a similar sense with Nikola Jokic today, where people just don't give a crap about him because he plays in Denver, and his play style isn't necessarily the most highlight-filled, and I think Kawhi Leonard was a very similar type player in 2017, because the 2017 San Antonio Spurs finished second in the NBA with 61 wins. They had the number 1 defense and number 2 net rating in the entire league, and Kawhi Leonard was the only true star on this team. Kawhi in 2017 put up 25.5 points, 6 rebounds, and 4 assists, along with 2 steals and 1 block, and he did this on 49, 38, 88 shooting splits. That is 26 points with 6 rebounds, 4 assists, some good steal and block numbers on 49, 38, 88 shooting splits. That's incredible efficiency right there on high volume scoring. And people want to say, yes, Kawhi Leonard had more help, so it doesn't matter. The Spurs were a really good team, blah, blah, blah. And no, they freaking weren't. The Spurs were not some great team this year. Kawhi's best teammate was LaMarcus Aldridge, and while Aldridge was a good player, I do not believe that he was a legitimate all-star player. He gave you 17 and 7 on 48% shooting. He just shot mid-ranges. He didn't really take any three-pointers. He was not a good defensive player. He was not a good playmaker. He wasn't even a very good rebounder considering his size. LaMarcus Aldridge was not a legit second star on a team that's winning 61 games in a very tough Western Conference. He was a borderline all-star caliber player who may have made the team that year specifically because Kawhi carried them to so many wins. You had to give the Spurs another all-star. That is the only reason he may have made the team in this season. And then you look at the other help on this team. You have Pau Gasol, and people say, well, he had Pau Gasol. He was a beast, right? No, he wasn't. Pau Gasol was 36 years old at this point. Now, he was not by any means a scrub player. He was a usable player in a starting lineup. He gave you 12 points and 8 rebounds. He still got a block a game. He still shot 50% from the field. But he was by no means the same Pau Gasol who was on the Lakers winning titles half a decade prior. That's not who this guy was anymore. He was clearly past his prime. He was not an all-star caliber player anymore. He was just a decent big man. Tony Parker was on this team, 34 years old. He was also past his prime. He gave you 10 points a game, 4.5 assists, 47% from the field. He still couldn't shoot threes, just like he couldn't in his younger days. He was an okay point guard, wasn't giving you a whole lot of playmaking. Danny Green rounds out this starting lineup with his 7 points a game. Yes, he was a very good three-point shooter. Yes, he was a good defender, but that's pretty much all he gave you. He was just a 3-and-D role player. He was not some star by any means. And then off the bench, you had Manu Ginobili. He played 69 games. Manu at this point was completely washed. He was 39 years old. He was giving you 8 points on really bad efficiency. Dude was not giving you much. David Lee, also washed, 33 years old, another 7 points a game. Jonathan Simmons was coming off the bench. Dwayne Dedmon before anybody even knew who he was. And the last guy who is even worth mentioning on this team is Patty Mills. Patty Mills is actually a lot older than I think people might realize. He was 28 in 2017, so doing some simple math here, I'm guessing he's like 33 right now. And at the time, he was a good three-point shooter, the best on the team, 41% from three. He gave you 10 points a game, but once again, he was just a role player. You have two very good three-point shooting role players, one of whom was also a good defender, one of whom was a terrible one. You have a secondary all-star who really didn't deserve to make the all-star team, who was also a bad defender. And then you have four actually, if you count David Lee, older players who used to be very good and are now out of their primes, and they're not necessarily bad players, although Manu Ginobili and David Lee, they were bad players at this point, but Tony Parker and Pau Gasol, still decent enough starting players, but not by any means star or even really good help. This was the Kawhi Leonard show, and with this help, once again, he led his team to 61 wins and the number 2 defense in the NBA. So not only did he deserve the MVP, but he also deserved the Defensive Player of the Year, because his only plus defender was Danny Green. And while Danny Green can be a good defender, especially here in his prime, I'm pretty sure anyone can tell you that he has his moments where he kind of slacks off on that end and makes some dumb decisions. Let's not act like Danny Green is some first-team all-defense player. He's just a pretty good 3-and-D defender. What else can I even say to get my point across? I know there's something that someone here is going to disagree with. Let's go back to the fact that Kawhi is the best player of the MVP candidates, because LeBron wasn't a real one that year. He had Kyrie, he had Kevin Love. The Cavs didn't win as much as they were expected to. Steph Curry and Kevin Durant are on the same team together. They cancel each other out in the voting. So that leaves the top 3 players in the league out of the discussion. Who is number 4? For my money, it is clearly Kawhi Leonard, followed at a distance by Russell Westbrook, who is followed very closely behind by James Harden. And if you really believe You are going to honestly tell me that Russell Westbrook was a better player than Kawhi Leonard this year? I think you're full of crap. I think you're full of crap and you have no idea what you're talking about. Yes, the 30-point triple-double was impressive. Yes, he carried his team. But you cannot honestly tell me for a second that if you believe Russell Westbrook's 32 points are better than Kawhi Leonard's 26 points, despite the massive gap in efficiency between the two players, you think that his 10 rebounds and 10 assists makes up for the fact that he was turning the ball over more than 5 times a game, and Kawhi Leonard was a defensive player of the year level defender, while Russell Westbrook was, let's be super nice here, let's be really generous and say that he was a slightly above average defender. Slightly above average, he was a slight positive on that end. Let's not say that he was just a neutral or even a negative. Let's be nice to him. We'll say that Westbrook was a slightly above average defender. He is still not a better player than Kawhi Leonard. Kawhi was better on both ends of the floor, especially the defensive end. Meanwhile, he led his team to more wins. What else can I say? He was the best player of the group. He won the most games of the group. Kawhi Leonard deserved the 2017 MVP award and Defensive Player of the Year award. I think he and Draymond Green should swap DPOYs in 2015 and 2017. Give them like their DPOYs to each other because Green deserved 2015, Kawhi deserved 2017. Yeah, give this man an MVP and Defensive Player of the Year season. That is what he deserves on his legacy, and that is how I view Kawhi Leonard all time. I view him as someone who has these awards, which he deserved, even though he did not get them. I hope you all understand why I am right. Not where I'm coming from. I hope you all understand that I am right here, and you agree with me. Thank you all for watching.